correction matters arising from the summary of the minutes of the previous session. It will be ignored, so Councilor Patrimonio.
Mr. Chairman, I move for the approval of the minutes of the previous session dated January 21, 2015.
Any second? Duly seconded. Remarks. Any objection? Hearing none. So this is approved. What about the special session? Summary of the minutes of the special session. Do you have any amendments, corrections, or matters arising from the summary of the minutes of the previous special session? Do I hear any motion to consider our summary of the minutes of the...
Mr. Chairman, I move to consider and approve the minutes of the previous session of the City Council of Dumaguete dated January 26, 2015.
Any second? Duly seconded. Remarks? Any objection? Hearing none, so this is approved. Let's proceed to the committee reports.
Your Honor,
Yes, Councilor Molles.
I move to avail a question of privilege, Your Honor.
Any second? Do I hear any second? Duly seconded. Remarks? Any objection? Hearing none, so this is approved. Yes, Mr.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Proceed,
Chair.
Councilor Molles.
When I went over the agenda for today's regular session, I was shocked to find out that the second reading for the proposed ordinance, which was unanimously approved on first reading last Wednesday, January 21, was not included for second reading. I made representation with a very able secretary to the City Council and members of the Secretariat, and together with author of said ordinance, Honorable Councilor Manny Arbon, we went through the sequence of events. Last January 14, was the crux of the problem when the pedicab drivers had a tigil pasada. So that on January 21, Wednesday, this humble representation, because at that time when I presented this, Honorable Arbon was out, I submitted for approval on first reading an amendatory ordinance to Ordinance 177 Series of 2007 and amended in 2011. And the minutes of that session, which we have just approved, would tell us that I did make a referral to the Committee on Traffic and Transportation and to the Committee on Rules, Ordinances, and Legal Matters, to the effect that there was a committee as a whole and public hearing that was scheduled on Friday, January 23. So that in effect, that committee as a whole would have been deemed as a committee meeting to that proposed ordinance already, wherein we had our additional public hearing, because we have had several public hearings wherein we heard the sentiments of the general public represented by the various different sectors, that of the religious sector, the senior citizens, the students, the business sector, ably represented by the President of the Negros Oriental Chamber of Commerce and Industry, in the person of Mr. Edward Du, wherein he also did put forth their computations on inflation. And of course, the transport sector was also represented by members of the operators and the MCH tricycle drivers. There was a special session scheduled on January 26, wherein Honorable Arbon and myself would have expected, as provided for in our internal rules, Section 56, that entitled Period to Report, the committee shall submit a report favorable or otherwise on the proposed ordinance within 5 working days, which would have been that Monday. But it was deemed necessary that a committee report will not be coming from the committee as a whole, but specifically on the Committee on Traffic and Transportation, Rules, Ordinances, and Legal Matter. On January 26, Honorable Councilor Danilo Teves Leon introduced for first reading another version to the effect of looking at the rates, basic fare rates. Up to that point, Honorable Arbon and myself were still waiting that we would have been invited to such needed committee meeting so that a committee report would have been done. Our proposed ordinance was already in its draft form last Friday when we had our public hearing. Through the time and after listening to the public hearing and to the special session on January 26, we made additional refinements to our proposed ordinance. However, we were informed that a meeting happened yesterday, January 27. Again, Honorable Manuel Manny Arbon and this humble representation were surprised why we were not invited to such meeting wherein an actual committee report would have been done to the approved proposed ordinance on first reading last January 21. Now, we come to today's agenda to find out that number one, it was not included. And we believe, we contend, that this should be heard on second reading, even if there are other arguments to the effect that none of what would have happened was done by the committees who were supposed to hear this. Ang atua lang gikalibugan ani ug ngano nga dili man tagaan og pagtagad tong amua nga proposed ordinance nga unta gibasihan man to sa pipila na kabuok public hearing. Gani pagpasulod ni Honorable Danilo Teves Leon sa iyang proposed ordinance last Monday, I opposed because I was not agreeable to its title. Honorable Arbon approved because of the basic reason that all proposed ordinances are going to be good, but he can explain that himself. And then there was the motion that a survey was to be done yesterday to the effect that Honorable Manuel Manny Arbon and this humble representation opposed because a survey will be unnecessary. We have already conducted a series of public hearings wherein we have already heard the sentiments of the people. What more additional sentiment or survey are we going to need? It would seem as if we are just going to utterly disregard the several public hearings that were conducted since December and the month of January. Also, we believe that, well, we have actually done a backyard survey on our own so that we will be ably supported in our proposed ordinance. But a survey done in one day, and if you would see the question that was given yesterday, I cannot understand how we will be able to arrive to a certain degree as to how we are going to go about it. We checked in the proposed ordinance of Honorable Danilo Teves Leon, and this humble representation and other legal luminaries that I have consulted would believe that if there are no refinements done on the proposed ordinance, this cannot be approved by the Sangguniang Panlalawigan. Basic factor that is missing would be the data that would be used to arrive into a certain basic fare rate for the city of Dumaguete. Since we still have so many things to consider, Your Honor, already submitted and received by the Secretariat is the proposed ordinance authored by Councilor Manuel R. Arbon and his humble representation, to which additional refinements have been done, to the effect that when we are going to take this up this afternoon for second reading, we already even have an amended title to the original title which I had approved for first reading on January 21. And other refinements to this 4-page resolution. Your Honor, I would like to end that the problem with regard the basic fare rate has escalated. Niabot na nigduha ka semana bisan tuod og nihangyo ta sa mga pedicab drivers ug sa mga sumasakay nga atuang tagaan og pagtagad ug respeto ang maong balaod nga say 50 ang balayran, pero ni hangyo ta nga ang mahimo masabot-sabot ang nila usa tungod kay balaod man ni gipirmahan man dayon sa mayor ato ang tagaan og respeto. Ang problema, daghan pa kaayo mga pedicab drivers ang wala makahibalo gawas sa naa pag-iuban nga pedicab drivers nga dili utuman gawas ngadto pipila ka mo nga wala lang gyapon mausab ang ilang pamatasan nga dili pareho sa batasan sa mga taga Dumaguete nga respetuoso nga pagkatawo. Your Honor, we have this proposed ordinance that would be in your tables, and we are going to hope and pray that this is going to be included in our agenda today so that we will be tackling 2 proposed ordinances today. We can make comparisons, we can join them together, we can do whatever you want to do. In fact, we can make everyone authors of this ordinance. Kana magong pag-author, di mo na importante. Gani, itong human sa January 21 ni duol nako ang ato ang buutan, Honorable Presiding Officer, Honorable Vice Mayor Woodrow Makiling, ug niingon siya nga, Ton, pwede bang i-appeal na to pag-author? Ning ko, pwede galit, i-mass motion na, wala problema. Ang ato lang gyud nga matagaan dayon og pinakadali, pinakasayon nga solusyon ang maong problema karon sa dakbayan sa Dumaguete. Again, Your Honor, lastly, hopefully, our proposed ordinance would be included for second reading today because we believe, as we have consulted many of the different sectors, that this is a very good ordinance. Thank you very much.
Okay, the Chair would like to be clarified. in line with the statement of Councilor Rimulyo, may we know from the members of this august body that you received the draft ordinance of Councilor Rimulyo? Because it is obviously both right and duty of these members of this august body to be fully informed of the draft ordinance, because we cannot intelligently discuss. Kung di ka nita maka-review, di ta makabasa sa proposed ordinance. Councilor Rimulyo, naging siya na mahimong tanim ang pilsa si reading. Are you ready to discuss the ordinance? Na wa pa niyo manawat, o wa pa man niyo makabasa, wa pa mo makatuon? So, the chair would like to know whether the members of this august body receive the copies of that particular proposed ordinance so that we can intelligently discuss. Councilor Patrimonio.
Patrimonio, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I accept I received also the proposed ordinance of Honorable Arbon and Honorable Remolio. That is why if we can harmonize between the proposed ordinance of the gentleman from Taclobo and Daro and Mangnao, and then we can harmonize it because we are here as part of the solution. We are not here to be part of the problem. This is what I love. Na ugmahimo lang atong nagtawon, na umayo ang kadandan, okay ra po ningila, o ato lang i-harmonize.
Kana, may gwapo.
Kana ang ako magod nga ako akong pagnanaw personally, this is my personal opinion nga niani ta dinhi nagdalastingog sa katawhan sa Dagbayan sa Dumaguete, isip konsehal, solusyon sa problema ang atong gibulong, and we are not part of the problem. So I hope that the gentleman who authored both ordinances, which is good for the public, maablihan nila hunahuna to harmonize both this resolution. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Councilor Dandang Leon.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I heard my personality being mentioned on the privilege speech of Honorable Remolio because I was the acting committee chair on transportation due to the fact that the chief committee chair was out of the city on official business. Now, on my part, last week's session, when we had the caucus at the mayor's vice mayor's office, the problem with regards to this issue was given to me, being the acting committee chairman on transportation. So I took it upon myself to present it to the meeting back in the office of a proposed ordinance, of which was on my head. When we resumed session, Honorable Remolio beat me on the first reading. I wasn't able to say it on record. That's what happened. With regards to the proposed ordinance, which I see now on my table, this is the first time I saw this. Karon lang ning buntuhan ako na nakita. And Honorable Remolio, being a senior councilor compared to me, on his 8th year, ikawalong po ito ko siyang konsihal. So, procedurally, kapag po siguro siya sa pag-present ordinansya. Now, under the legislative, can I say the legislative toolkit, naman yung legislative toolkit, there is a procedure on how to present an ordinance under that book of which we got from our PCL conferences. And it says there, if I leave kong flash ko, right? Steps in making an ordinance, naadiya ang libruha, of which we should all follow. What are the procedural steps in enacting an ordinance or resolution? The enactment involves 11 steps. So, step 1, a Sanggunian member or group of members files with the secretary to the Sanggunian, which is Atty. Tulsidas, 2 or 3 copies of the draft ordinance. Sa step 1 daan, wala na si draft ordinance ipakita. So, being the committee chair sa transportation, how could I discuss such ordinance na wala gani siya naabot ng gilawat sa atong sekretary. Sa step 1 daan, sige pa sa daan.